Hello, paranormal peeps. I'm your host, Charlie, and today I'm joined by my co-hosts,
Colton, Diego,
Izzy.
And today we actually managed to get all four of us here today for once in a lifetime. Can you believe that, guys? So today we have a very special guest by the name of Beyond Fringe. His name is Cyrus. Many of you may know him from his prior endeavor, The Venomous Fringe, but we will be talking to him today and getting his opinion on different certain things. So how are we doing, Chris?
Well, good evening, gentlemen. It's very good to be sitting down and being interviewed by the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. I'm very happy to be here tonight. But thank you, guys. It's my pleasure to be here. It's a good opportunity to speak with upcoming investigators and show hosts out there who are trying to put out their brand, and I'm happy to be sitting here discussing things of the unknown with you guys.
Thank you. That means a lot to us. We even though we're kind of new, I kind of like to think that we kind of know what we're doing here. I mean, not to come across as like know-it-alls or anything like that, but like I'm pretty sure we step comfortably in this type of waters we're treading. What do you guys think?
Yes, I agree.
We feel pretty confident.
Yeah, no. So Chris, the way that this is going to work is that I'm going to go ahead and ask you a couple of questions, and after that, we'll just hit it off the bat, just
Fire away.
All right. So from what I understand, you started podcasting in 2017 under the channel Venomous Fringe, right?
The origins of my podcasting career, in 2017, I launched Cryptonormal X, actually. It was a show that started from March of 2017 to September of 2017. I really kind of didn't understand the podcasting community when it comes to cryptids at the beginning, and it was kind of a bit of an early stage, and it was also a maturity stage, too. I think when you launch one podcast and see how it goes, and then you learn from it and then move on. I launched Venomous Fringe in 2018 after I took basically almost a year hiatus from the podcast scene, and I was going to walk into narration at first, but then I backed out because I didn't want to put myself as a narrator, so I wanted to stick to that show host podcaster, asking questions and trying to find answers to the unknown. So in June of 2018, I launched Venomous Fringe with the 10 Tales of Dogmen. It was a small mini-series I did. But from then on, I turned into a Cryptid Paranormal show, and I took a break in August of 2020, and then came back January of this year and launched Beyond Fringe, which is taking the Venomous name out and replacing Beyond and putting it with Beyond. More of a way of just kind of moving forward. When I took that break, it took me more of a lot of a time to focus on myself and figure out other outlets and trying to come together with things. And while we're still facing roadblocks this day, Beyond Fringe is just a way of kind of crafting together, kind of like, okay, it's very respectful and trying to find answers to this. So from the podcasting from 2017, 2021, it's been quite a road. So,
personally, when I first heard that your channel was going to be defunct back in August of 2020, I had honestly I was kind of losing hope with the whole cryptid community, the whole community on YouTube, because prior to that we had the passing of the great Brenton Salwin from Brenton Salwin's Mysteries and his channel, and then the allegations towards the BDRP and the subsequent deletion of his channel. I kind of felt that the whole cryptid community, and then the somewhat cancellation of your old show, it kind of brought me to my brought it to my attention that some of my favorite cryptid people, they're leaving. What does that leave us with? I know there are other well-known cryptid people who are knowledgeable, and I totally respect them. I have nothing against them. They're pretty cool. I listen to them.
Right.
but
Hmm.
they're not the same people who I looked up to when I first started listening to this. So I decided, the old generation is heading out. Why not bring in the new generation? But I am so glad that you decided to come back, albeit with a different name. I'm happy that you decided to come back to this, Chris, because this whole community, whether you look at it through one lens or another, we're like one huge family.
Right.
Even though some of us may not see eye to eye, we're still a huge family. We're all looking for the same thing. We're looking for the truth, whether that be the paranormal or the cryptid, cryptozoology. But yeah, no. Do you have anything to add, Chris?
You hit the nail on the head when it comes to one big family. I like to put it as a one big dysfunctional family. You really bring up a lot of good points, especially when it comes to a new generation of cryptozoologists, because I feel that cryptozoology had lost its way in a way because we've, as a culture throughout the 2010s, we were introduced to social media. Prior to, I'd say up until maybe 1995, we really had an old exploration of Bigfoot, what it was. We didn't know what Dogman was yet. We heard about it briefly in Wisconsin in the early 90s, but it didn't explode yet until the early 2000s. So at this point in time, UFOs, Bigfoot, Mothman, Loch Ness Monster, these were all relevant cryptids that were out there that were being sparked right before this time. And we really only knew about the old way of going about investigations and research. And when we introduced ourselves to social media, when we introduced ourselves to cell phones, we found ways to communicate with others. It was easier, yes. And then also, too, we found ways to craft and create a fan base, and we can utilize it good or bad. And I respect every cryptozoologist out there, every podcaster who discusses this material. Yes, I have differences with those out there, as anybody else who has differences with others out there. But I have a respect grid because it is, like you said, one big family, and we all just want to find the answers at the end of the day. I think what it boils down to, too, is that, yeah, there are things out there that are said and done and things that kind of just don't make a lot of sense. But at the same time, we're all human beings. We all have some sort of baggage that falls onto us. And whether that baggage, whether it's good or bad, it's always bad. But for some of us too, we have some things that we do, some things that have regret, guilt, or things of our past that deeply affect us that follow on. And some can use it as demons. Today we lost DMX as a rapper, and he had battled his demons. And even though that he was open and honest about it, he still battled his demons, and unfortunately he passed away from those demons. And anybody out there who does battle an addiction or does have some baggage on them, with the cryptid and paranormal community, we can say that yes, we blend together with some sort of dark cloud. And 90% of the time we can theorize and say that it's because of the things we study. Because yeah, we can go into a whole world of mystery with this stuff. But the big thing about it is that at the end of the day, we're all trying to find the answers towards what we are finding our interest in. Because our interest either begins with an encounter or it begins with an open mindset. And I mean, when you have an encounter, when you see one of these things, or if you see something abnormal, or if your mind is open and you look at a show like I did, what got my interest in it, and I was kind of, while the show was dramatized and gave a fictional reoccurring of what was said from the eyewitness, it did build a mindset that, yeah, could these creatures exist? Could UFOs exist? So in the long run of this whole feedback I'm given, I feel that, yes, I respect everything that has been put into the community. While I've not agreed with everything, I've been very respectful about it. And yeah, in the beginning, I came off cocky with things, but you grow up and you mature into the field and you understand it. And I do feel that the community has lost its way, whether it's because of controversy with show hosts or things that have happened, or because people have unfortunately passed, or people just retire from it because, yeah, there comes a point where it's like, well, it's too much for somebody. And then things just escalate from there. And I feel as humanity, as we evolve with technology and we evolve with new ways of philosophy, that we'll find ways to shut ourselves down even more. And I don't mean to say that in such a bad way, an obtuse way, but it's kind of where it's like the spider web effect. And then it's also too, and it's like a carousel, but when it stops spinning, it's like, well, where do we go from there if we can't get off of it? So, yeah, I've basically given a long dialect about this, but really, I mean, it's good to communicate with others who think of the same way I do, because it was one of the reasons why I stepped down. I just didn't like the direction of a lot of things were going, even though I respect those out there who do it for their vision. It's just something I don't agree with, and it really takes a lot out of you. So, yeah, that's really much I can say about that.
That's it's funny because personally, Chris, I like you said when you were talking about not agreeing with a lot of people. Personally, I don't find myself agreeing with you a lot, but there are a lot of things I do agree with you with. So that's what kind of, that's why I have respect for you, and that's how I think respect should be treated. You can,
as adults.
Yes. So going away from that topic for a little bit, I know we kind of, simmered on it a little bit longer than we should have, because I don't like getting into that, nitty gritty stuff. I'm not that guy.
Neither am I.
So I just wanted to, get that across in case some people were wondering, or they were just curious minds. So as a fellow researcher, I know that you're most infamous for your work on the Dogman. So for those listening that don't know what a Dogman is, Chris, do you want to take this one, or do I take this one? Since you are kind of like one of not the leading experts, but one of the leading figures.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say an expert or leading figure, to be honest with you. I don't consider myself.
Spend most of your time as.
Well, and I appreciate that. I mean, yeah, I have given my own philosophy and opinion on what the Dogman is, but it's also a topic too that is very obtuse. And without going into the discussion of Bigfoot, for a Dogman, a creature that's been reported as being an upright canine, having the facial feature of a German Shepherd's head, often been described as also a werewolf. And a lot of people have theorized and thought that these things are demonic, or there's some sort of interdimensional creature, something that comes from a different dimension, and even believing to be a UFO or an alien, all of these different thoughts. The Dogman is like a puzzle. It's one puzzle that the pieces you have to take the time and the patience to put together, but also to not to put the wrong pieces in the wrong spot. And it's a very complicated puzzle, because it's a creature that, while it's described mostly like a dog-like creature, the name itself can also be a bit differed. See, in recent months, and for the longest time, I've said it would be Dogman, but in recent months, I've kind of thought of it more like a man-wolf, or something that isn't focused on the words Dogman, mostly because it could sound comical for some people and it might not sound realistic. I can tell you that I've spoken to several Bigfoot investigators who are extremely skeptical of the Dogman creature, and have often thought of the name as kind of being a bit of a goof, I guess you could say, to put easy, because it just doesn't seem to be as realistic as it sounds. But in heavy measures, the Dogman, a creature that was first reports back in the late 1800s and was first cited in mainstream media in the early 90s by Linda Godfrey. She was working as a reporter for a local Wisconsin paper, and there were eyewitnesses coming forward talking about some werewolf-like creature. She had dubbed it the Beast of Bray Road, because that's where all the encounters were occurring on, in between the night's hours of 8 and 4 a.m., if memory serves right, from the first book. And then prior to that, though, in the 80s, a disc jockey in Traverse City, Michigan, named Steve Cook, had put out an April Fool's song called The Michigan Dogman, and it was called The Legend. I've switched it up. It was about the Michigan Dogman, and it was basically just a decade of tales of each of the seventh year of each decade telling of a Dogman sighting. And it started from the first encounters reported in 1887 all the way to 1987. And there were people who were coming forward after who were saying that they had seen this Dogman creature. And Steve had written the song as just an April Fool's joke, and it didn't have any realism to it besides just trying to make a scare in early spring. So, of course, people were kind of thrown off by that. But then when we had the Beast of Bray Road reports, people were kind of drawing these ideas. Okay, could they be similar? Could they be close? Michigan and Wisconsin are not too far apart from one another, so it's possible. But at the same time, too, with the Dogman creature, it's thanks to social media and evolution of the launch of other podcasts out there who have discussed it. You know, it's exploded into something that is very far as almost like a pop culture creature. It's very much like Bigfoot, but also too because it's something that many can draw a similarity to, because people who are either in the horror community who also admire cryptozoology or paranormal, they will take idea that a Dogman reminds them of the werewolves we've seen from The Howling, American Werewolf in London, Dog Soldiers, Silver Bullet, Bad Moon, all of those werewolf films. So the Dogman is a creature that is a very complex cryptid with a very concrete origin, whether it's some Native American spirit, a flesh and blood animal, or something from a different dimension. What could it be? The answer to that is, I don't know. I don't know, because there isn't enough information out there that we can say could validate it being what it really is.
And you're correct to think that, because I don't think we will know for quite a while what this thing is. Right. But Chris, what I did want to ask you is, do you have? I don't want this to sound weird or anything, but do you have any? I don't know if regret's the right word, but do you not like that people associate you, a researcher, with Dogman the most over other cryptids, or have you come to accept it that you're the Dogman guy, or
I mean, personally, it's never really bothered me. Because if someone watches my show, they'll know that I've done a lot of Dogman discussion on it. I've mostly done lives with Dogman, and a lot of my topics are Dogman, which has kind of been the recurring idea. But I've also talked about Bigfoot, and I've done investigations with people, and I just did one recently in March with an investigator trying to find possible Bigfoot activity in a certain area. And, I just I consider myself a cryptozoologist. If people know me best from Dogman, that's great, because then it's okay, so about Dogman. So and so, question, answer, that type of routine. So I have no really any regret about that, or if anything, just it's good to be associated with something rather than be associated with everything and then kind of be thrown into the mix with stuff, but then no one will really know because it's you're all over the place. And I have a respect, like I said prior, I have respect for people, whether I get along with them or not, who are Bigfoot researchers, Dogman researchers, UFO researchers, paranormal researchers, So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to ask that because it's always lingered in the back of my mind, because I know a lot of people, not in the the cryptozoological or paranormal field, but because how with either bands or artists, sometimes they don't like being known for only one song, and that's all people ever know them for. That's what I was kind of gravitating towards.
Yeah, no, and I see what you're saying. I mean, to add on to that a little bit, for me personally, what I do for me outside of the cryptid community, I consider this all a hobby. I don't want to be, if people recognize me from being that cryptozoologist, that guy that does the podcast, that's great. My other podcasts, I talk about things that are not cryptid related. So if people recognize me from one of those two boats, fine. If you recognize me from being a podcaster, fine. If you recognize me from being what I'm doing for my career as an artist, okay, fine. You know, it's great. I think that is great to be recognized as something in kind of different trades. So that way it's kind of like, okay, you're there, you have a commitment. And nowadays, survival is big. And everybody has different ways of going about their plans, survival, and how they want to do things in life. And, you know, yeah, podcasting has always been an interest to me. So outside of what I really want to do in life, yeah, hobby-wise, podcasting, I'd like to be remembered for somebody if they know me from the cryptid community. Because that way, if they don't really know about it, I can talk to them about it. Have a casual conversation with them the way I'm having with you guys right now.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's a perfect mindset, honestly. So I know I've been hogging the floor here. I'm just gonna go ahead and ask my co-hosts if they have any questions right now, but we'll get back to me because I'm the host.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what was the whole community like before like social media was this big thing? Because I've only been into it recently.
Ever since I brought him in.
Yeah, like a year ago. So I don't really know like what it was before.
Well, I mean, like back before social media, before the real computer age, like digital age took over with things. Like cryptozoology back in the 1900s, it wasn't as huge as it was. I mean, people knew what UFOs were back in like the 1900s, and we had UFO related incidents prior to really cryptid incidents. People also were firm believers into the paranormal because of a lot of the paranormal like aesthetics that we had seen transcribed in our culture and our society from the beginning of like time. So like there was a relevance to it, but it wasn't really big until 67 when Bob Gilman and Roger Patterson filmed Patty back in Bluff Creek in October of 67, when really people started getting on the craze of the Bigfoot idea. And then decades prior, we had the Ape Canyon incident in 24, which was just such a memorable incident. And around that time period too, one of the surviving eyewitnesses had came forward and talked about what happened, which also made relevance to Ape Canyon. So the community wise back then, it was kind of like, and it was like anything, like, you know how like with today's, like go to a convention, you have to get like an access ticket, you can go through the pass, it's fine. You can get it very much so through social media. Anything nowadays you can get through social media, but back then, you know, you'd have to like call a certain number if you can find it, if you can even see if you can find somebody who might have the same interest with you, because you couldn't talk to anybody if you had an encounter or if you were an investigator unless you had Leonard Nimoy or Robert Stack coming to your door saying, you know, what we'd like to do on In Search Of, or come and solve a mystery with Bigfoot. You know, like all of those factors, it was all about like standardized networking through a different way without cell phones and computers. It was very hush hush. And I think much like how we see nowadays with certain like things, whether we have an opinion on homosexuality, for example, and what it is like for people who have tattoos or certain things like that. Back in like those days, like the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, you know, that was something that you couldn't really talk about back then. So in comparison, I mean, with cryptids, it was the same thing. And even now you can't talk about some of it. Some people are scared to talk about the sectors I just talked about and talked about with even cryptids. I can't tell my best friend about what I do because they would look at me like I have like 5 heads and they're like, Chris, are you on LSD? Like, you can't talk to anybody like that. So the community back then was very quiet. And I also think too, with John Keel and who, God bless him, he was such a great influence with me into the cryptid community too, because he had put out the Mothman Prophecies, and it was a book that he had written while he was investigating in Point Pleasant in 66 during the Mothman UFO craze. So it was all about basically underground networking back in the day. compared to now in social media, where you can just go on Facebook and join a Bigfoot group, or on YouTube you can look up a podcast, and go on Instagram and look up people who are posting their evidence, so times have changed drastically.
Okay, Chris, I just wanted to backtrack a little bit. When you talked about Ape Canyon, I know I'm kind of cutting into my co-host time, but yeah, whatever.
Yeah, it's fine.
You talked about the Ape Canyon. For those listening that don't know what occurred at Ape Canyon, the basic gist of it is a loggers, correct? They were a set of loggers, Chris?
Like miners, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
A set of loggers / miners. They had gone out, and they had, they were looking around, and they had found a Bigfoot / Sasquatch. They shot at it. It apparently fell into a ditch. So they tried to recover and so that happened, and that recurring night, they were attacked in their cabin by I don't know if you'd call them a tribe or a pod. Actually, this was a question that we had a while ago, but we'll get to that later. They were attacked by a group of Bigfoots in their cabins, and they were harassed the entire night. So that's what the incident at Ape Canyon was. Very loosely, I gave it to you very loosely. So
very good story too,
isn't it? It's very fascinating. But
it's one of my favorites. But go on. What were you going to say?
Yes. So me and my co-host were arguing. Me and Colton, my original co-host.
Yeah.
We were arguing. What do you call a group of Bigfoot? We were giving out so many different names that I kind of already forgot we were shooting around.
A group of Bigfoot is called a shoe.
It wouldn't be a shoe.
Wouldn't it just be like a gaggle of Bigfoot?
Oh, well,
I say a pod of Bigfoot.
Pod.
No, because that's like whales already.
What, Chris?
A shoe posse?
A shoe posse. Hey,
That sounds kind of nice, actually. Shoe posse of Bigfoot.
Yeah, no, but like in a serious way, what do you think would be like the plural of Bigfoot?
It's such a tough question. It's an easy, for some people it's anybody who is new to it can kind of associate it with like an easy question, but it's such a tough question. It's like basically what a Bigfoot is. It's because we often can associate the dogmen in a pack, right? Because we think of a pack of coyotes or a pack of wild dogs. It's kind of, or a pack of wolves. I mean, just the kind of the manuscript of it. But with Bigfoot, I'd have to say I've always narrowed it down to two. You mentioned pod, and I like that. I've never thought of pod, and I think we discussed pod when I also spoke to you guys. And I always associate it as tribes, and I use tribes, but I don't use it as what people might think. We think of tribes, we think of Native American tribes. Now, we think of what they could be, okay, but what any other group of people? I mean, are we going to call Bigfoot like a group of misfits, or are we going to call them like a gang of like hairy creatures? I mean,
a bunch of hooligans.
Hooligans of Bigfoot,
like hairy hooligans. Like it's not. It doesn't sound. It doesn't. It sounds comedic and it sounds impulsive towards like the idea of what we're studying. And I feel that for me, I'd have to go ahead and I'd have to say as a tribe, because one, it kind of sounds a bit realistic, because if you look at it, if they're operating all together, then they obviously sleep together, eat together. It's like a tribe, like Native Americans used to do. But then we also think of them as, you say pod, I would have to say almost like, you'd have to say clan, almost like you'd say like a clan of them, and like a clan of Bigfoot. I've noticed that some researchers have said clan before in the past. I know I've spoken to, when I went out investigating with this one investigator recently, he described them as a clan, and it's another name I've always associated to it with, but this is of course my personal preference. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm very well could be wrong, but it's always what I've thought of them as, those two as the main. It's a good question. I'm not going to lie. It's really good. It's good debate.
Yeah. The only reason I brought it up is because, well, first of all, we were kind of feuding about it back and forth, but yeah, no, it's one of those honest to God questions. It sounds so stupid when you say it, you know, when you say it out loud, but it's an honest question. It's like people debating the gooses, the geese, or what is it?
The geese eye.
The geese. Yeah, it's kind of like that, but I know I kind of got us off topic, but
this was a very important question, and it needed to be discussed.
yes.
Oh, but what would be stupid about the question, though, is what I want to, like, out of curiosity, is it because of how to address it? Because to somebody normally they'd be like, well, that's like asking them, what can it go ahead and scratch its own ass, you know? Like, it's literally like, if it can do something so comedic, you know, like, what could it be? It's a very good question. I don't see it as stupid. I think it's a very good question because, yeah, like, it's a question that I'm sure you guys haven't, like, you're not the first to think about that. I'm not the first to think about that, but it's definitely to associate it scientifically how you can put them as. So I like the question, honestly.
Thank you. You don't have to be so nice to us. We're yeah, no. The only reason I kind of thought it was, you know, sort of a stupid question is because it sounds like one of the first things that you would know about a Bigfoot. You know, it's one of the first things that would pop into mind. That's the only reason I kind of classify it as a stupid question. Even though the old adage goes, there's never a stupid question, there's only stupid answers. What?
And people.
Exactly.
So let's go back to my co-hosts and see if they have anything else.
Okay. We're talking about Bigfoot, right? Now, immediately when everyone thinks about Bigfoot, we think of like giant hairy apes, right? That's what we think their origin is. Now, what if Bigfoots were actually just an evolutionary form of the Neanderthals? You know which ones I'm talking about?
Yes.
No.
That would be us, correct?
No, it wouldn't be us.
No, we're two different things from Neanderthals.
We're Homo sapiens.
No, I know, but didn't we evolve from Neanderthals?
That's besides the point. Let him speak.
Well, and in addition to that, now that I kind of like have that in mind, it's kind of like that theory that every animal has like a connected ancestor, kind of like bats and birds, but eventually they come to a middle where they evolve the same.
A common ancestor.
Yeah.
Right. The missing link.
Yeah.
So, can I clarify something for them real quick, Chris, before you take it on, or do you want to take it on before me?
No, please go first.
No, okay. So Izzy, to answer your question, sort of, there is something that, so personally, when it comes to Bigfoot, I am under the firm belief of the 10 types of Bigfoot, the general types, 10 general types. Type 2 of Bigfoot is what many people would classify as a Neanderthal type looking Bigfoot. The most notable case of this type of Bigfoot was the Dennis Martin case, where the kid was abducted from a national park, and many reports later stated that they saw a prehistoric type looking man, you know, taking the kid somewhere else. But that's all I wanted to interject. Go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry if I took your time.
So, question being is, what do I think of like the history of Bigfoot, like what it could possibly be, or like what? I just want to clarify before I go ahead and go and give the best answer I could to the question.
Where do you think its origins came from? Like,
okay.
Where do you think it could have evolved from?
You know, the thing about this too, and this is also like the question about like, you know, what it could be, you know, to put it in retrospect, we look at like the Neanderthal, and then we think of like the Gigantosaurus, or however you pronounce it, and all of these different ancestries from like the early days of evolution during the caveman age. You know, these beings, these giant figures, could there have been some sort of crossbreeding? Could have there been some sort of hybrid? Has science found something towards it? I think it's been debated thousands of times. I think they've kind of I think they may have put something together. See, the thing about it is that, and it's kind of like Dogman. When we think about origins, where we think where they come from, if we look at it from a flesh and blood perspective, we can go ahead and say that in the three ways of putting it. Could they be a crossbred hybrid? Could they be a loss between the primates and humans? Could there have been that? Goes in the first one, but and to put it there too, do they have certain characteristics to us? What we do, yeah, but also too, we are obviously can operate more than such as they. We can do things they can't do. We can drive a car, fire a gun, go out, and they can craft weaponry. Could they be a cross and a loss between Neanderthals or Gigantorus, or some form of an old form of prehistoric primate, or even in general, you could say like a caveman or a mix? Possibly. But it's a tough question too, because it's an answer that I don't even have a full explanation on, because I fear that as time goes on, we have so many different ideas on what they could be, but at the same time, the opinions are always changing, because there's different verses of explanation that are being thrown at you that now you're putting into your mind and trying to digest it, but you're also trying to play it in your head thinking, okay, what they could be, what they could happen to be. And if that theory does kind of make sense, we think, all right, could it? Then draw out the possibilities and we throw it into that effect. Could they be something from a Native American spirit? Possibly. We've heard of that story many of times. We've heard about the Native American folklore, and we've heard about a lot of the hieroglyphs or the caves and the carvings of mysterious beings on the walls. And it's kind of something too that's been theorized big, and it's possible. Do I think they could be a Native American water spirit, or if they could be a form of Native American creature? Quite possibly. How to prove it though? I mean, necessarily, when I've never had an engagement and conversation with someone of a Native American tribe or Cherokee, but I've always spoken to eyewitnesses or in general researchers who have, and they do talk highly of it, and they discuss it. They also discuss a lot of the similarities of how their tribe can go about it, or how their culture is spread towards the Bigfoot creature when it comes to carving, cultural instinct, kind of like a spiritual belief, and that's how people have kind of gone about it. You've heard about those stories of shamans and medicine men millions of times, and how they've used their energy, and we hear about cases with almost similar to that of like the skinwalker and the wendigos of that folklore. So people think of it as of a Native American creature. Quite possibly, I've thought of it like that. I personally think it's a flesh and blood creature. And to explain a little bit, yeah, I go about it by the facts being that for me, I do keep an open mind. And origin-wise, if it's doing things that I've seen a natural animal can do, whether if it, like a bear can claw a tree, if a bear can kind of wreck out a tree, climb up a tree, have a stool, or have scat and bleed, it comes off something natural. And that's something too that I've kind of thought of as if it could be a natural. Could it be a hybrid mix, origin wise? Could it be something of a hybrid? So there's like three different kind of ways to go about it, and it's all hard to explain. I'm not saying I'm right. I could very well be wrong, but it's also a taboo topic too, because many have tried to answer it the best way they could, like myself, but it's a matter of it being plausible and agreeable with, because it's a matter of what someone else might think. And for a newcomer, they will go and look at 1,000 different theories before they finalize what the theory they want to believe could be. So it's a tough question. Like the question about what they could be categorized as if they're all together as a group. It's a tough question to kind of answer, but hopefully it's the best way I could put it.
Oh, well, thank you for giving me your best possible answer. That's really all I had. So that's really been buzzing around my mind.
Yeah, he's not very articulate. Sorry about that, Chris.
So rude.
That's kind of what I'm known for. Anyway, so I actually had kind of a little question, Chris. So, going back, I actually had, this is a personal case that I am dealing with right now currently with my spiritual specialist, Diego, here. So basically the gist is we had an eyewitness testimony that we know very well personally. She had encountered what seemed to be a dog man, but I kind of want to get your opinion on this because it has both of us kind of puzzled as to what it could be, and it's a little insight for the people listening here, if you don't mind, Chris.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I know you're a firm believer into the whole the flesh and blood type, the flesh and blood camp. I'm sort of in between that, but it's the way that we did it. It's kind of weird. So the way it started off with, I'll give you all the facts right now. This started in basically the person we had talked to. Basically, she started doing something she wasn't supposed to, which is an interest with the occult and the that type of thing. And she started to try doing astral projection and stuff like that. And she started working with incense and that type of thing. When a couple months into doing all this stuff, she witnesses a dog man type thing in front of her house. And the way she described it was for me, it was the classic description of the werewolf from Van Helsing, but I'll go ahead and read you from my document. So it was about 6 to 7 feet tall. It was extremely dark. It had the hind legs of a dog, so it rules out type 3, right? It had raccoon-type hands. It had a massive upper body with a slender waist. Now, this is what really kind of, weirded me out, because I've never heard of it personally. It was pointy ears with small lobes and lynx. It had the shape of a lynx's type of ears. It had a long snout with curved teeth. It had sort of like a swimmer's build. There were no visible tail and no exposed genitalia. Now the weird thing here is it looked as if it was a black matter in smoky detail. Yeah. So it looked as if where its fur was supposed to be, it was like dark smoke. And what really caught me off guard is that this person that we know reported coyotes are very frequent on her property, but whenever this thing is around, there are no coyotes whatsoever, whether that be howling or visually seen. So I also asked her if she had seen any unexplained lights on the ground or in the sky, and she had said she hadn't. What are your possible ideas on this, since I'm getting your consultation on this right now?
Well, personally, let me ask you a couple questions about this particular case. For one, and this is just for me to get an idea out of it, so that I can give you a best answer towards it. Did she describe anything in particular, anything ominous, any weird odors, any smells like that were kind of like, you could say it'd be like foul odor, like a rotten flesh or expired meat type odor? But was there any particular odor she had smelled?
No, I had asked her that question during our first interview with her, and she did not state that. However, there have been occurrences inside of her house, which it's kind of strange. Uh, Anything else, Chris?
Paranormal. Well, is it like paranormal wise? Is it
Yes.
like okay?
Paranormal wise.
All right. And then my final question would be: has there been any weird occurrences where she lives? Has there been any missing animals? Any people said anything strange? Anything abnormal? Or has that been kind of like quiet necessarily?
The worst that you'll get over there are maybe a couple of dead rabbits, or yeah, a couple of dead rabbits alongside the road. But that's debatable whether it be a car or
Okay.
a coyote.
Yeah. So personally, I'd say that what it could be going on is two things. I think one, that this thing is obviously, she knows that this thing is interested in her territory, where she lives, where she's at. If there's a lot of woods, there's a lot of acre, it will use it as a habitat. And personally, from some eyewitnesses who've come forward and explained things to me, the reasons why I ask those questions is because in one occurrence, people have smelt the foul odor. I know that someone also had a series of missing animals happening in their neighborhood, and they would be part of this group on social media, Facebook, and they'd say that they're missing pets, missing horses, missing dogs, cats. And these are all factors of it being a predator and finding all of its source for feeding, its territory. Now, what it sounds like is, it doesn't sound like it's coming off in a fashion that is intimidating. That's going into my second discussion, is I think that it sounds like it just could be just interested. Does it seem like it's going to attack her or do anything that would be harmless? No, I don't think so necessarily. However, I don't know this case. I don't know the witness. All I can just say from feedback wise is, if there are different patterns in her area, such as if she's hearing noises in the woods, how frequent is it? If she happens to see damaged twigs and trees by around her wood line, and also too, if there are, if anything, on the property or around the area, if there's prints, paw prints, tracks. It sounds like this thing is just interested in the territory. The Van Helsing description, that has been often described as a canine variant type 3, as some people have kind of put it as, but it's also been described also as like the dog soldier type or the howling type as well. But if it looked like something like that, some people have described it very transparent with that. Do I think it's something demonic or something supernatural that's on her property or on the area? I don't think so. If it's only just had a sighting and nothing too heinous, particularly, if this creature was leaving her like dead animals or something around her perimeter, or if it was stalking her at night, looking out her window and stuff, then that's a different situation. Because then that's, of course, something there that is transparent and harmless turns into something that could be. Because now it's getting close. It's getting interested in her. So right now I'd have to say that it seems moderate, but I would just keep in contact with her and just frequently just throw out an update. Whether it's like a few times a week, or if it's just like once a week to make it easier. You just want to make sure any crazy developments. So that's my insight on it.
Actually, Chris, I'm gonna hand you over to my spiritual specialist Diego here, and he'll talk to you about it for a second.
So
Okay.
it was about a few weeks ago that she had texted me after our initial report. She had told me that she heard like scratching kind of like outside of her window, and then when she was going to go outside to like go investigate, she heard like a picture fall over from the next room, which she thought was really odd and disturbing to her. And you had said that potentially it could be interested in her. I want to see what your thought in that is.
Yeah, I'm going to go to a case that I covered for a while, and it happened in the UK. There was a woman who I lost contact with, unfortunately, and I had dealt with her for almost 2 years. Her name, I'm going to give her the name of Kathy. I gave her a different name when I discussed the story, but just to get to the story to it and point, giving her an alias wise. She had a series of light bulbs on her front wall outside of her front door being unscrewed and taken out, and they were crushed. And this was something ominous. Her husband had set up security cameras, and they had caught a few things on the camera. This creature was stalking their perimeter. There were things in this perimeter that this creature was attracted to, whether it was garbage, whether it was the equipment that were outside, whether it was the things that were outside. And it got very violent because this creature, there was a stone wall, and in the UK, in the village where this woman resides, there are these like stone walls, there's these little wall architectures that are in certain villages, and this creature took one from her backyard and used a chunk of it to throw towards the window of her living room. And the events got so violent that they had to move. They ended up moving, from what I remember, but at the same time, if I'm not mistaken, that because of that incident, they wanted to move. And my point to this is that this creature was manifesting aggression and behaviors because of a lot of the odors and a lot of the things outside and the family that it attracted itself to. And I had investigators, and we talked about this on a show of mine, about how this woman had such an encounters that were going on and that were freaking her out, her family out. And it ended up going into a thing where I brought these investigators on to them. She ended up talking to the investigators, and we found solutions. And a lot of those big solutions was a certain way with using trash, a certain way with keeping odors non-toxic, something with particular pieces, something with the way the outside could look, something with the way the habitat is. And it's and I'll send a link to this. I can throw it out there because it was a very interesting story. And, the crazy thing about all this was that finding out all of these techniques and things that have happened, could this woman have things on her property and certain odors that she could bring into the house that could set this creature off? Now, if it's clawing at the house and then the picture frame falls, let me ask you this. Where the clawing was coming from, was it from the opposite direction of where this portrait fell, or was it right around there?
I'm not entirely sure, but I could say that maybe it was around there.
Because if it was, one can interpret that, well, could the clawing may have triggered a small vibration that may have knocked it down? It's possible. There are times where I've had things in my room fall, and it's either because of a certain vibration, or it is the fact that something's getting moved and I've run into it, but it could be something so small and subtle. It's the fact being that, could it trigger some sort of small vibration? Possibly. I mean, we don't know the size of the house. We don't know the structure of it entirely. But let's also look at it from a paranormal side of it. Could the thing be attracted to her? Could there be some energy that she has that manifests itself towards her? What is it attracted to it necessarily? We don't know. And could it possibly claw at the window, claw at the back of the house or the side of the house where it happened, and it wanted to distract her, but then knock the portrait down to send a message? We could look at it like that as well. But right now, it's hard to call because, one, the information that has been provided, it's not enough to say that it's 100% that, oh, it's something demonic or if it's something that's necessarily evil, because we also look at cases with people who've had these creatures follow them, and the cases sometimes, yeah, there's been clawing, yeah, there's been some things that have left for these eyewitnesses. There have been some violent occurrences, but they've been cleared thanks to this associated team that were able to. There's an old dogman. All these creatures, I believe, have different personalities. There's different ways they're triggered to us as humans. There's reasons why they want us to see them, for us who are selected to see them. And at the same time, they'll do things to know that they're there, whether you like it or not. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense, and thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we really appreciate your insight on this. This sort of like mini consultation, sort of on this, because it's been racking our minds for a bit. There are some additional details that I could go over, assuming you have free time after the interview. But yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, so I'm gonna rip a page right out of your book, Chris. I'm gonna ask you. So, with all the missing 411 cases, do you think cryptids are responsible for any of the missing 411s?
Yeah, no,
I gotta rip it out of your page. I'm sorry, but I had to.
Oh, that's all right. We're all influenced by somebody, right? So, I mean, it's good to ask also a very good scientific question, because it's like, okay, people go missing all the time in the woods because sometimes we have animals like bear, mountain lion, even bobcats and cougars that can tear us apart. The bears being the main ones. People who are very inexperienced in the woods will often fall at high steeps, not pay attention to their surroundings. And people, there's also, believe it or not, and this is something that I found out because I was talking with this investigator too, and he was even telling me, he was like, just watch out for the booby traps too, if people have booby traps, because booby traps people, they'll mark their areas and they'll keep things hidden. You'll look things for transparency. I know some researchers who've actually ran into booby traps too. Luckily, they were with a group of people, so they were able to get out of them, but somebody might not be so lucky. And some people might fall into a booby trap. And this booby trap's so far into the woods, they might not even be able to be close to civilization. And who's going to hear them from a certain distance away? And who knows what's out there that can easily tear them apart, if they're in this booby trap for a long period of time. Keep in mind that the human body can't go with a certain degree of food and water for a certain amount of days. I think like after like a week, you're done. So, to answer the question now in reference to like, are they responsible? I bring what I just set up because, I'm a mixture between I think that they do and then they don't. Because people can be inexperienced going to like a Bigfoot territory but won't even realize it's Bigfoot territory. And then this Bigfoot will be pissed off at them and it might do something. They won't know because this Bigfoot can't speak, can't talk like us. And I feel that people, when they also do stuff, they don't realize they're in a territory that they're in, and it's a bad idea sometimes. Take hunters who shoot around the area or shoot their own prey. If you shoot a Bigfoot's prey and you take it for your own, it's going to be mad. You just killed its fucking food. I apologize, I didn't mean to cuss.
No, it's okay. It's okay. They do it all the time.
You have no idea how many times I've thought about putting it, and I was just like, yeah. But it's literally how you could put it. It's like it's going to get pissed at you for taking its food source. So I feel that they are responsible to a degree, but I also feel that humans play a factor into their own disappearances and their own vanishing. We look at conspiracy side of things too, though. To go off subject real quick, but to put it in part of the example I'm given, we look at the case that happened in South America with the two teenagers, right? that were on the trip. I forgot their names. I know one was like Chris. I forgot the other one. It's drawing a blank because I'm trying to go as fast as I could with this. But they were they were in this. They had vanished, but they had photographs left over of things that happened, of what was going on. How did they vanish? But there was no source. It was unknown. So look at people who go vanishing all the time with unknown explanation, and how many people can't seem to grip, like, well, why would they vanish? Like, what's the story behind it? So I kind of think it's a little bit of both. I think people are going missing in both in a way of natural causes and something out there, a predator, whether it's Bigfoot, Dogman, bear, mountain lion, or cougar, is getting them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you do bring up a lot of good points. And one thing that I guess a lot of people don't like to take into accountability is how stupid a human can be sometimes, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, yeah. So I definitely agree with you on that one. What do you guys think?
No, I totally agree with that, because, like, anyone can go into the woods, but not everyone can come out, you know? Like, you can go exploring up in the woods, but, like, only a certain amount of people can go deep in the woods and survive there for like 3 days.
Yeah, definitely. So Chris, we're gonna go ahead and take a little step back from into the cryptid part, and we're gonna go ahead and go into the paranormal part. You know, I know you're not well known for your paranormal endeavors, but let's see what we can get from you this time. All right.
Yeah, fire away.
The first question I wanted to ask is something I kind of asked my other guest that I had on maybe a month ago. I'm going to tell you a set of I don't know how to, I guess entities would be the best way to describe them, and I want you to personally rank their severity, like least to greatest. Like in power scale, I guess, yeah, power scale these entities.
Okay.
All right. So we're gonna start off with like elemental spirits, earthbound spirits. Of course, we got demons, shadow people, and fallen angels. Now, I want you to go ahead and rank them accordingly to how you think they are in the severity scale.
All right, so from like least to best.
Yeah.
Well, personally, fallen angels, because the thing is that all of those names you just mentioned, I feel that as like the way you put them, for like from when you said word to mouth in the beginning, is basically how I'd put it from best to worst, because it's literally how it goes down the diagram. Fallen angels, we could see fallen angels as something of a very strong supernatural force, but at the same time we amplify the idea that what a fallen angel can do. What is it? Is it a messenger? Is it something that is a demon? It can manifest into something. It can be anything. It can even be any of the names you just mentioned. So I like fallen angels is like the equivalence to what you'd say a cryptid. If a skinwalker, it could be. But a fallen angel, in retrospect of what they are, I'd have to say would be the least, because I feel that, and this might also be because hadn't had the most encounters with people who've come on and discussed about it, or also because a lot of people aren't really open to it because of the mythology of it. But a lot of people I've talked to about it, they really don't consider it extremely too evil. But it's evil in a sense, but not as violent as you'd say the elemental or a demonic entity or shadow person would be. But that would be the first one, and I would put it as the least. Now, demons would be right above it, because anything, like I said too, back with like the fallen angel, it could be anything. A demon, like I've had some people talk about the shadow man, and how a shadow person being sort of like demonic entity doing things, something that's been transparently evil, and then doing things in certain areas, whether it's a penitentiary or an asylum, and it's done demonic things, or it has shown demonic energy. Then we look at the spirits. That would be like in the third, to be the median, because those two can be anything, but at the same time they have a manifestation of something that is hard to explain in a supernatural or spiritual guidance. You have to be really spiritual. You have to be really transparent into the study of this to get an idea on how a spirit can manifest. Because there's good spirits, there's bad spirits. People can see spirits through cemeteries, they say. People can see spirits at home. People see apparitions. Apparitions have done things. Apparitions, people have been strapped down. Sleep paralysis has been a big factor in some paranormal activity, and some spirits have been responsible for that. I feel like I'm missing one. There was elemental, and what was the other one, Charlie?
Earthbound spirits. So basically, like people who lived on this earth, they lived their life and then they out of nowhere just die, like right. Unexpected death, or they're willingly staying here.
Okay, so let me flip it up a little bit, because I would then have to go ahead and say with Earthbound, I think with Earthbound would probably be at the bottom least, and then above would be Fallen Angel, and then so on. Because I think Earthbound, there's been a lot of people that I've spoken to have had a lot of interesting experiences with Earthbound people. A lot of saying good experiences. And it could be just because of the people I've spoken to about it. I've had one eyewitness talk about losing someone close to them, but at the same time, while they were close to them, they were rotten to other people, and it was like that kind of spirit that didn't leave, but was in a way like it didn't give it it didn't come off as like it was going to hurt him, I guess you could say. So I just wanted to fix that up. So then at that point, the other last option would be above that would be elemental. The reason why I think elemental is the worst of them all is because in every elemental case, there has been someone who I've read and heard of that has had a terrifying experience, who has either been pushed, shoved, pulled, attacked, and it's never been pleasant. Even talking about it is very haunting. It's not something that it's a taboo topic to talk about, really, but elemental is the top tier. I, at the longest leisure, had no interest in thinking of elementals until I talked about it with a few friends, and they discussed what they thought of it, and it really drew into a big thing of like, okay, what's an elemental? What it could be? What's its purpose? What does it want? So that's how I would put the list.
The way you put the list is, to me, it's very surprising, because I would have to like totally rearrange that list for me personally. But I don't know, how do you guys over here, how do you guys deal with his ranking?
I feel like his rank was pretty good, in my opinion, pretty accurate to what I would personally put it to list as.
What about you, Colton?
Oh, I'm not very versed, so I can't say if I agree or disagree, but I understand why you put them that way.
Of course, me, I don't completely disagree. I agree with a few of them, yes. Not completely in the order that I would put them, but I do agree with him.
Yeah, no, it's honestly very surprising that you put like Fallen Angel towards the very bottom, because most of the people I've interviewed, Fallen Angel is always like the baddest of the bad, because they're not like demons who are working for, they're working for Satan. Fallen angels, they're like free agents. They can do whatever they want, whenever they want. It's very surprising, and I guess it widens my perspective a bit since you mentioned it, since you've given me your insight on this, which is absolutely great.
Here's another thing too. Like maybe it's also because I haven't really had a lot of people come forward, and I mean, yeah, I've researched the fallen angel, I've looked at it, and I've thought about it, but I think also too it happens when I have some people, some investigators telling me about these crazy elemental stories or the spiritual aspect or the demon stories, and those are the big three right there. But even with a fallen angel, because it's also been theorized about, like with Mothman or the Owlman, or they were just some form of a fallen angel that has descended and is doing this and that under some form of work. And, that also could play a factor into it. I'm not saying that I would rank it. If I had a bit more of an extensive idea about everything, every category, and explored it a bit more, especially with Fallen Angels and Earthbound, I'd have to say that I would rearrange it in a certain way. But of course, this is just how I would put it for now. And paranormal is always changing. So as time goes on, that list could always change. Who knows? Maybe Elemental may even be like the least, and the Fallen Angels and Earthbound, or even the Demonic, would be the top 3 tiers. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, we're all entitled to differences, of course. So it's a very good way of putting it.
Definitely, it's nice to get a variety of answers from different people of different walks of life. So I'm gonna go ahead and ask you another question here before I hand it off to these guys if they have anything. So I had interviewed a witness the other day, and I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but he claims to have witnessed a shadow person. But here's the kicker. He had experienced shadow people before, but they were all your traditional black type of not to be racist or anything, but black type of shadow people. And he had actually seen a white one manifest. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this different color of shadow person. Maybe he was seeing something else. Maybe it decided to take a different, appearance. I don't know. What's your personal thoughts on that, Chris?
Well, for one, I mean, shadow person's a shadow person. They always see a black shadowy figure. So, to see something like that, a shadow person, I would feel that if it was something any other color, that it might be something different. It could have been an elemental. It could have been something even furtherly demonic. Hell, I mean, it could have been anything at the owner. I mean, for all we know, it could even been just a small reflection, his mind playing tricks on him. The best part about when we have encounters, when we first have an encounter, our minds are so adjacent to what we saw. For example, I know someone close to me who had witnessed a body on the road the other day in a car accident. And what they had seen while driving hadn't left them, and it still hasn't to this day. And that's almost been a week. But the point is that when when your mind plays so much thought into something, that you think you're seeing things, or you think of things in such a different way. And if anything, this individual, maybe his mind was playing tricks on him. Maybe there was some form of psychosis that played into his mind, and he just didn't really think of it and thought he saw a white shadow, but maybe it was just a reflection. You know how many times I've mistaken a light reflection for something else? I freak myself out too with it, because I do think it looks like something. But maybe he does have more to his case, and that there is something that is following him, and it could either be good or bad. And that will, of course, rely on what he chooses to do with getting assistance from this case and so on. But that's what I would think. What I think about all this is, it seems like a regular paranormal experience. And I mean, in his discussion, I mean, does he say, or does it come off like it's something demonic or something that's attacked him? Has there been anything more to it, if I may ask?
I'll go ahead and send you over to Diego real quick.
When he had first told us about it, he did say that he had kind of confronted it and said, if you're evil, leave. If you're not evil, stay. Or something around those lines. And then he did report that he never saw it again after that.
And that adds on to the idea where it's like, okay, so he kind of had a confrontation with it in a way, and maybe this spirit respected what he said, because there have been some cases where people will be straight up and say, listen, and I use straight up in the best context, and then they stand their ground. You don't scare me. Everyone says, oh, fear. You don't give out fear in the worst fashion. Fear will, of course, trigger more energy into the person spreading fear. So standing your ground and telling the spirit that you're not going to take it and that this is your house, that is something that takes a lot of courage to do. And I'm sure that this individual was extremely terrified, I'd assume, at first of what he was dealing with. Because after all, I mean, you're dealing with something here that you have no explanation to, that you don't have an answer fully to, but you're going to stand your ground because that's the only solution you can think of right now. And lo and behold. And if he hasn't had any further activity, then I'd assume that this spirit may have just been respected what he had said and just passed off and said that it doesn't matter. This guy told me to leave. I'm going to leave. All right. He's mad at me. I've kind of scared him enough. And on to the next. It's simple as that. Would I recommend him, I guess, blessing the house, doing having a priest come over and do a blessing? Absolutely. Just to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And also to bless himself and to spread himself with energy, with positive energy, whether he has to get sage, whether he has to convert into some paganism and incense, get rid of any negativity in the house. To protect himself is also something I'd suggest, if not suggested already.
Well, we'll be sure to let him know, honestly, because I don't think we ever talked about like the same thing.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
Yeah. No, we only had gotten it in passing, but it's recorded, so I'm pretty sure I can get more information, or I can even contact him if I wanted to. But I just thought that was a very interesting case, because you don't hear of something like that
It's very interesting.
often.
Well, it's good to know too that there was some form of relief at the end of it. If this entity had stopped showing itself to him, and that it realized that he was getting fed up with seeing this thing, that takes a lot of dignity right there. There's not a lot of people that do that. A lot of people that actually go ahead and stand their ground. They'll get an exorcist or a priest before they do that. It takes a lot of courage. It does.
Yeah, it does. But yeah. As for you guys, do you have any questions when it comes to a paranormal?
I guess shadow people, or shadow men, or shadow person.
What about them?
No, it's because lots of people from where I live in my area, they've all seen a man with a very long black dress coat to the point where you can't see his feet, and a very big black hat covering basically his entire face.
That would be
The Hat
the
Man.
Hat Man.
Do you have any information on the Hat Man that you could disclose right now, Chris?
The thing with the Hat Man is that I've always associated it as like something of a demonic nature, something that can draw energy in an unknown form. It can pick someone. It doesn't care who. There's a form of intensity to it. I don't necessarily know too much besides what I've heard about of it. It's a creepy paranormal entity. I think it's something that is extremely frightening. Do I think it's something that can be tampered with just one priest if needed? No, I think there should be a couple different exorcisms provided, because it's an entity that I think it's hard to get away from. And if people are seeing this thing, then I would want to know if other people are having paranormal experiences in their households, and if it's drawing its energy towards them in some form. There's so many different ways of looking at it, but the Hat Demon is definitely one paranormal creature or entity, not creature, that is, I'd say, demonic. Is it an elemental? I don't think so, but it is demonic, whatever it is, this shadowy figure.
Is that all you had?
Oh no, I've also seen this thing in my house, my grandma's house specifically. So it has my mother, my father, and my uncle. So in other words, that and
So you,
Has it been like a has there been any like past history with any like let me ask you this, okay? So if this thing has drawn energy to your grandmother's, is there been any history of any paranormal experiences, perhaps maybe something with a Ouija board? Has there been anything of that, if I may ask?
let's see. Well, there was one part of our family that really didn't like us, so they did do some form of black magic on us. And not only that, my dad would mess with like I guess death herself or something like that. I don't remember what my mom told me specifically.
what he's referring to is very prevalent in our area, Chris. Since we do live on the borderland, it's what many in our culture would call
La Santa Muerte.
La Santa Muerte or brujeria, which is really dark magic,
Right.
and it's not something that should be taken lightly.
No, and literally, it's something I would say, because it is a form of energy, a form of evil, as I would say, that is very inhumane, and something that is not to be taken with in any ways, shape, or form with a positive route. It's dangerous. And it's something that I think anybody who have the courtesy to mess with is something that you need to protect yourself daily with. And if I may ask, I mean, has anyone protected themselves at all with these occurrences?
Let's see. My mom would get the house cleansed by a native man almost weekly. Yeah, shaman. Almost for like 2 months after my grandma passed. There was that. And then my mom uses a very heavy amount of sage for our own house. But basically,
And none of these have helped in any shape or form with the encounters or these paranormal experiences?
they've had happen less and less the more we do things such as that.
Okay, yeah. The thing is that like with protection, there's always ways to. I don't know if you guys say a prayer, but in a lot of protection, we either do prayers or we sage the house or we incense the house, and we get rid of all this negative energy. We smoke as much as we could to get rid of anything that is going to give off negative vibes or anything that can harm us. So personally, if everything is wearing down, I'd say that you're exercising this paranormal activity the right way. If something does change, however, and if the shaman's magic was able to assist in a certain form, so be it. That's good, because then that way it'd be able to caster its energy to defeat this negative energy. And saging is also an assistance as well to that as well too. So I would love to know, keep me posted on that, Charlie. Even if you would like, I'd like to keep updated on this, because it's very interesting to me.
I will do, Chris. Even now, I'm kind of surprised that he hasn't told both me and Diego about this, because this is actually something that both me and Diego sort of specialize in. We know how to get rid of things like this, because personally, I've had an encounter with something. I mean, not to get into it, but I've had an encounter with something I wish I had never gone in touch with, but I got rid of it. And ever since then, I've listened to the teachings of Ed and Lorraine Warren. I'm pretty sure you know of them.
Right. Yep.
Pretty well-known researchers in the field, like big grandparents of the field. I felt like maybe we could help him out with this as well. But I will definitely keep you posted with this, Chris.
Please do. It's a very interesting case, and I hope all for the best. I hope that you're able to resolve this paranormal activity and be able to have a peaceful life after this particular situation.
Now, I know we've had you on for quite a bit, and I'm pretty sure everybody's getting tired here. So, I'm just gonna ask one last question, and
Sure, go ahead.
And then we can talk after this a little bit. Chris, do you have any upcoming news that your viewers should know about, or anything like that?
Well, right now, YouTube and Patreon and Spreaker are in the works. I'm kind of in the middle between figuring out how I want to go about the rest of my crypto career because of how I feel towards certain aspects and things, and I've kind of been figuring out my own life as well. So right now, we have several different uploads we have to put out, including your guys' interview, which will be coming out this weekend, and that is going to be one of the uploads. I'm going to have a few other uploads throughout the course of April, and then by May, it'll be kind of decision time whether we can do some live events that we're going to be doing and recording as well to put on our other outlets. But that's kind of the work in progress right now for the show. So be on the lookout for April and May, big months to discuss upcoming and strange phenomena on Beyond Fringe. So that is the current update for the show right now.
That sounds amazing, and personally, I can't wait until I hear the rest of your stuff, Chris. Because honestly, you're one of my favorite, podcasters when it comes to this. So I'm really looking forward to this. But I guess this has been the show. I was your host, Charlie Cage, and these have been my co-hosts,
Colton, Diego,
Busy.
and this has been our guest, Chris Cyrus from Beyond Fringe, and we'll see you guys later.
Have a good night, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again.